So the SAMR model says, look, what matters when you're introducing technology into the classroom? So from that result 4 levels, the substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition levels that have progressively greater impact on student outcomes. So at the substitution level, you're saying, look, I used to do something with my students before. And now I bring in technology and I do exactly the same thing, but using the technology to replace something I was using before. It's a great first step. The only thing you have to be aware of is it tends not to modify student outcomes. In other words, students tend to do as well as they did before. At the augmentation level, though, you do start to see some improvement in student outcomes. What you're doing there is you're saying, well, hold on. Now that I have this new technology, can't I do something that I couldn't do before with the old technology, even as I keep the task the same? But I'm going to change significantly some aspect of how that task is accomplished using the technology. That puts me at the modification level. And now I start to see much more significant improvements in student outcomes. The heart of the task remains the same. Have students create maps that are now not generic, but focus on their specific areas of interest, but do so in such a way that they're interacting socially. So what used to be an individual task, student makes the map, hands it in to me, the teacher, I grade it, hand it back, right? Now it's become a social task where it's not just for me, it's also for their peers. It's the basis for a conversation, the basis for a process of social discussion, and ultimately a process by which they each learn from each other, become mentors to each other, provide an authentic audience to each other. So at the redefinition level, you say, okay, what would I want to do? Well, I want to keep my goals, my objectives from before, but have them take place through a completely different task that's made possible exclusively through a technology that will allow us to share this knowledge with others. You know, I'm thinking of the type of resource that you would put, say, on YouTube or iTunes U, so that students from other classes, other schools could also learn from this. So this idea of mentorship that was already introduced at the modification level becomes expanded and made available to a broader audience at the redefinition level. At redefinition is where you see the greatest impact upon student outcomes. At redefinition is, as I say, where you take a step back and say, wow, I didn't even realize students could do that before.
Right. So a question I have is, many teachers are wanting to do this, and it's a little intimidating. Can you give some advice on how to start?
Start at the beginning, at the substitution level. You're a good teacher. As I said before, you know some things that worked, and just say, how do I translate them into the digital domain? You know, you've used technology all along as a teacher, right? Paper, pencil, books, these are all technologies. So what you're saying is, I'm going to be replacing one technology with another. And I'm going to be guided by what I know works for my students. Once you've got that in place, then you say, okay, what aspects of this could enhance what I'm doing beyond what I could do with the old technologies? And then you can keep on building from that. So from there you can say, okay, once I have a good set of tools, how would I start modifying my practice so that I keep the heart of those activities that I know works well for me in place, but I start incorporating new aspects as I modify them that allow me to reach for other educational goals that I couldn't reach for before. And eventually then you can go for, okay, I'm ready to create something new altogether. But it takes time, and I think it's important for people to realize that. You shouldn't feel bad if you say, well, geez, I just started doing this yesterday. How come I'm not at redefinition today? And it's important to realize, too, that not everything you do has to be at the redefinition level, and you don't need to force things. So that's also important to realize. Not every element of one's practice needs to be at those levels. Is it worthwhile setting them as a target for an overall important component of your practice? Yes.
I like that idea.
But it is not a compulsory must-do for everything under the sun.
I think that gives teachers an idea that they can create these, so to speak, benchmarks in the learning process that move through these levels. And I really like that idea.